welcome to a brand new episode of Business PNG. The UNDP and its partners have joined forces with businesses around Papua New Guinea to implement the Sustainable Development Goals. The private sector plays a pivotal role in advancing the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. In 2016, the country's private sector and civil society committed to contributing to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which seeks to eliminate poverty, hunger, and address other pressing issues within the next 15 years. And recently, they did just that. The United Nations Development Programme has partnered with the Business Council of Papua New Guinea to prepare a platform that maps business engagement with the Sustainable Development Goals.
2 years ago, we started talking to the Business Council about sustainable development goals and the importance of businesses also embracing these goals and really building those into the model of business working in the country. And tonight, we're launching this platform which we thought about and dreamt about 2 years ago, and it is a very, very exciting moment because for the first time, Papua New Guinean businesses have provided some data which we have translated into a platform. And what this platform will do is tell the story to the whole of Papua New Guinea about businesses' contribution to the development of the country, not just about creating jobs for people. Of course, businesses do that, but also the way in which they contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's a live platform, so by the time we have the APEC next year, I know that the Business Council will also launch it fully with all of the, properly, with all the information from all the Business Council members and so on. So it's a very, very exciting moment today.
The dashboard, which will be presented online, has been prepared by Social Corps, an Indian-based data analytical company, to provide a one-stop shop for business engagement with SDGs, and will provide a unique fingerprint of how businesses are contributing to the SDGs. So far, 7 companies have signed up to participate.
It's the first time ever in the world that businesses are working together to have such a platform and such a tool. And actually, it's very, very exciting. So Social Corps have brought their expertise looking at the data challenges across the world and saying, how can you present data in a way where people can understand it and show the links with the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals, and every single business, I hope, will be, when they see it, will be excited to say, yes, this enables us to tell the story of the way in which businesses are contributing, are a force for good in this country and are contributing to the development of the country, not just through providing jobs for our people, jobs and training and so on, all the good things that businesses do, but also contributing to these global goals that Papua New Guinea government has signed up for.
Over 9,000 companies have signed up to the SDGs globally through Global Compact, a voluntary initiative based on company commitments to implement universal sustainability principles and to undertake partnerships in support of the SDGs. In Papua New Guinea, the Business Council and UNDP have gone one step further to develop a methodology that provides a unique fingerprint of business engagements with the SDGs.
For a number of years, a lot of these sustainable development goals, we do it as a part of our business without thinking about it, without separating it, because sometimes you feel that it's the government's responsibility to worry about the health, to worry about the roads, to worry about the education of our kids. And quite often, what the government does and what the companies do, there's a disconnect. So I think with this, with what the United Nations Development Programme is doing with this dashboard, it will mean that for the first time, companies can show what the sector is doing, whether it's agriculture, oil and gas, retail, or companies individually, for example, New Britain Palm Oil Steamships or SP Brewery. We can show clearly how our company performance is achieving the SDGs in line with what the government's expectations are, because the government will be achieving certain goals, and we as a company will achieve certain goals, and and obviously continue to do that. But it's about finally recognizing it. And as a company, I don't think we know about it, but to be able to sort of compare notes with the government for the first time, I think that's quite important.
The dashboard will go online later this month and will continue to be developed with new companies added throughout 2018.
I'm Mary Batulo. This is Kokopo, East New Britain Province, and you're watching Business PNG.
Manufacturing remains critically important to both the developing and the advanced world. In the former, it continues to provide a pathway from subsistence agriculture to rising incomes and living standards. In the latter, it remains a vital source of innovation and competitiveness, making outsized contribution to research and developments, exports and productivity growth. But the manufacturing sector has changed, bringing both opportunities and challenges, and neither business leaders nor policy makers can rely on old responses in the new manufacturing environment. In global terms, Papua New Guinea's manufacturing sector is small and has a high cost of production. Naturally, this acts as a barrier to exporting, and yet local producers are increasingly finding new markets, particularly in the neighbouring Solomon Islands and other Pacific Island countries, but even in Australia and New Zealand. The range of goods made in PNG is quite impressive. Much of the country's manufactured produce is aimed at a domestic consumer market that is growing so rapidly, albeit from a low base, that many local manufacturers are struggling to meet demand. Stakeholders have alluded to the importance of the sector and urged that continuous emphasis be placed on the manufacturing and agriculture sectors.
I think there has in the past been a substantial lack of real understanding what manufacturing is. When people go overseas, they go to massive manufacturing plants. It could be a car manufacturing plant or something very big, and they're impressed. But of course, PNG is not really set up to have giant factories like that. But if you went down the back streets of whether it's Indonesia or India or somewhere else, you would find there are lots and lots of artisan factories or small factories producing many items which are necessary in a country like this. And so I don't think there has been an understanding of just how small and simple manufacturing, or SME if you like, has a rightful place in PNG and should have been developed. And I think that's something that's been lacking. I think it's good that the current government has recognised that agriculture and manufacturing does have a rightful role in Papua New Guinea, and I applaud them for taking these steps to move forward.
I think the budget's a realistic budget. They talk about sustainability, which is very important. They are talking about, in the budget, putting emphasis and putting money back into agriculture and infrastructure, which is important. Certainly, I mean, if you develop the infrastructure around agriculture, certainly you will create the jobs. That comes hand in hand, because you need manpower to do any sort of agriculture project around the country. There are limitations, in terms of land issues, law and order, things like that.
Although it plays second fiddle to the national capital Port Moresby, Lae is PNG's industrial capital and boasts considerable activity in manufacturing, trading, agribusiness, and more recently, fisheries. Much of PNG's existing manufacturing sector is centered around Lae, and to a lesser extent, Port Moresby. Many of PNG's largest producers have their head offices in Lae, including KK Kingston. However, the capital of Morobe is still plagued by the kind of infrastructure challenges that are endemic in PNG. Its poorly maintained urban roads have earned it the nickname Pothole City, while congestion at PNG's busiest port leads to constant freight delays. It also shares the same power problems as the rest of the country, with its accessibility to reliable electricity lacking.
We have quite a number of barriers here because of infrastructure. High cost of wharfage and shipping makes it difficult for us to land raw materials here as competitively as other countries do. The slowness of getting things off the wharf is just unacceptable. The quality of electricity, which is one of our major inputs to our manufacturing process, is high, and in addition it is unreliable. The quality of it is very poor, and as a result we suffer with numerous breakdowns and issues with our machinery, which is caused by poor quality power. And so those are costs that we have to bear in our cost of goods, and in other countries you would not have that.
The downturn in the country's economy, however, continues to affect the local manufacturing industry, with many manufacturers forced to cut jobs.
That's good. Take a walk. Okay, so Michael, you have a long experience, obviously, in business in this part of the country. What is happening at the moment? How would you describe the situation?
Tough times is basically how I would describe the situation overall. I think you would be hard pressed to find any business in Lae and in PNG generally who's doing well in the current economic climate. Everyone's in the process of adjusting to the new, more difficult business conditions that we've had post-LNG. And whether that's been downsizing their operations or revisiting what is core business, restructuring, all of those things.
Right.
So everyone's in an adjustment phase,
Right.
and everyone's doing it tough.
Now, in a time like that, obviously, jobs, it's always what really takes the toll.
Absolutely.
Companies are starting to let the workforce, but also I think historically Papua New Guinea is a country that has a huge problem when it comes to employment, but nobody really talks about it. Oh,
This is correct.
It's an argument that is not really tapped.
I 100% agree. I often say that I think unemployment is the single biggest problem that we have socially and economically in PNG. You would be hard pressed to get a formal unemployment figure, but my personal estimates is that it would be north of 50%.
North of 50%.
Absolutely. If you walk around, and particularly if you look at the younger demographic, the number of young people who are looking for jobs and can't get a job is enormous. One of my favourite lines is we don't have a crime problem in PNG, we have an unemployment problem.
True.
And that's just been made worse with the current downturn in the economy because every company is laying off. You have more and more people who want jobs and are now out of work.
Right. So obviously that's going to have some social implication inevitably.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. You've seen it with an increase in crime around Lae. There's been a lot more petty crime generally and violent crime in particular, whether it's armed robberies or break and enters or pickpocketing. All of these kinds of crime have gone up substantially in the last couple of years.
Right. Now the question is, and as you know, we're doing a documentary about the relationship between the European Union and Papua New Guinea. It's 40 years, and the European Union over the years has offered many grants and many projects. But we're trying to understand essentially what it really means also when it comes to job creation. Okay, so there is this preferential agreement between Papua New Guinea and the European Union. You can access the market essentially free of duty, duty free. Now that has affected essentially mostly the tuna industry with the canneries and so on.
That's the most obvious one. Yeah.
That's the most obvious one. But I feel that perhaps there should be, and there could be, more opportunities in the future. What can you say about that?
I 100% agree. I mean, another example would be the palm oil market. New Britain Palm Oil exports a substantial amount of its production to Europe, and because it has its sustainability credentials, it's a very attractive offer over there. Cocoa for the production of chocolate is another one that I know is doing reasonably well. A substantial amount of cocoa is exported to Europe. Coffee, I couldn't actually tell you how much is going over there, but I think for all of those sectors, there's opportunity to do more. export a whole lot more. It's a question of output and being able to get your product to market. One of the great challenges, whether you're a cocoa producer or a coffee producer, is getting your product to market at a reasonable price so it can then be exported.
And how do you get the product to market? What is it that is linking? Is the famous
Roads.
supply chain,
Absolutely.
right?
It's infrastructure, it's roads. That's the biggest challenge. If you were to take a drive from Leyte to any of the areas that are producing coffee and cocoa, you'd find it's a very adventurous drive. You'd probably enjoy it,
Yeah.
but for a farmer who's producing an agricultural product and trying to get it to market, it results in a lot of damage to products and a huge amount of additional cost.
Right. Now, when it comes to the tuna industry, the canneries are all in Ley, okay?
Yes.
So you grew up here in a way. So did you see the sort of economic and socio-economic benefit? What has happened because of that investment? How many jobs were created?
Thousands of additional jobs have been created. Thousands of additional jobs. Each one of those canneries individually is employing thousands of people. Together, they must have created in excess of 10,000 additional jobs.
10,000 additional jobs. So
That
if
would
you
be my guess.
multiply by 3, 4, an average family in Papua New Guinea. So
I mean, my general rule of thumb is for every one person who's employed, their income is going towards supporting another 10 people. So if we've created an additional 10,000 jobs through the fishing industry, that's supporting approximately 100,000 people.
So imagine if the same would happen with the oil,
Correct.
with the cocoa,
coffee, and everything else.
so it's a great opportunity. So Papua New Guinea should actually take advantage of it for the future.
Absolutely believe so.
Yeah.
I mean, so many of the agricultural products we're producing in PNG have demand in Europe, and we should take advantage of that, particularly with the preferential access.
Right.
It's no accident that all these tuna companies decided to move to PNG. It's specifically because PNG has that preferential access.
Obviously. Yeah.
I'm Leanne Gerari in Manila, and you're watching Business PNG.
Observer safety on fishing vessels in the Pacific has long been an issue in the fishing industry. With the disappearance of the late James Namburu earlier this year from a Chinese-flagged PNG chartered purse seine vessel off the coast of Nauru, environmentalists have urged for the safety measures to be implemented. The late Mr. Namburu was the 6th observer to go missing at sea in recent times and the 4th from Papua New Guinea. Environmentalists and NGO groups used the recent WCPFC forum in Manila to air their concerns about observer safety in the Pacific. Granted, it is a challenge faced by all seafarers, the Pacific countries have placed a strong focus on observer safety. According to Alfred Cook from the World Wildlife Fund New Zealand, the measures put in place to protect regional fisheries observers are not being adequately implemented.
In James Nambaru's case, who was the PNG observer that went missing, I think there's still quite a few questions around what happened. The overall conclusion was that it was a potential suicide. There was some evidence, video evidence, of what happened on board the vessel. And that actually emphasizes a greater need for electronic monitoring on board these vessels. It's not just about catching people doing bad things. It's also about being able to prove the elements of what really happened out at sea. So it can protect the industry and crews as much as it can punish them for wrongdoing.
Cook added that the Pacific countries and regulatory government bodies need to be transparent and release information to the families and the public about observer deaths in a timely manner, something he claims is not happening regularly. Philip Pollen, Deputy Managing Director for the National Fisheries Authority, gave an update on the death of the late Mr. Nambaru, stating that the case is now in the hands of the police and not with the NFA.
We believe we have the biggest observer team in the Pacific. We've got about 250 active observers, much more than other Pacific Island countries. The task of managing the large number is quite difficult, and we acknowledge the fact that there is incident like that happening. We are doing all we can to minimize the incident as such, because we are not the investigating body anymore. The investigation now is shifted to the police as a criminal investigations. So what we're doing now is sitting with police and said, look, how can we actually take the interest of the family so that at least we provide some comfort in addressing some of those things that they think that we have not done well or the report has not done well. Police is quite slow in doing its report, and we can't do much. We can't push them, and we can't do much, and we have just to wait until the police will submit the report to Corona, who will then declare the person deceased or missing, and what actions do we take in terms of.
And that's all we have for this episode of Business PNG. For more information, or if you would simply like to view this episode again, visit EMTV online at the URL at the bottom of your screen. Or to simply join the conversation, like our page on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at the Twitter handle at Business PNG. Now, from the Business PNG team and myself, we wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a very prosperous New Year. I'm Leanne Jarari, and this was Business PNG.